Go, hitting the button, pulling up my notes, popping the top on this water. Corley Moore, Firehouse Vigilance. This is Weekly Scrap, number 82. Tonight's guest is a 30-year veteran of the fire service. He worked his way through the ranks and retired from Fort Walton Beach as a battalion chief. He is now currently the operations chief with Midway Fire Department. He has the credentials, the paper, and more importantly, the experience. He instructs with CF Tactics, co-founder of 850 Fireman. He has taught at conferences across the country, coast to coast. And one of the most important qualifications to me is when Chief Ike says, Shannon Stone is my right-hand man. I could not do what I do without him. That speaks volumes. So, Chief Stone, it is my pleasure to have you on today as the guest of Weekly Scrap number 82. Welcome, brother.
Thank you, man. I greatly appreciate it. We were talking a little before we started, and I'm not quite sure how I made it on here with all the guys and the heavy hitters that you have on here, man. But you know what? I'm going to roll with it. I'm going to take advantage of it. So thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
I'm excited, brother. After the response of when I put your picture up and the hype, and the response, I'm excited. To everyone watching live, and they are logging in now, if you have questions for Shannon or myself, please do not hesitate to ask. Throw them in the comments. And Chief, did I miss anything in the intro? Anything you want to throw in there that I missed?
No, you made me sound way better than I am. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Humility. All right, here we go. We're already getting comments coming at you. I want to start off with the 850 because I've been down there 4 times in the last year, and actually probably in the last 7 months. One was vacation. The others were all catching conferences from Navarre Beach and Pensacola and Chief Ike, of course. But I have to say, is there something in the air or the water that makes so many into the job firemen in the panhandle of Florida, up in that area?
I've been asked that off and on over the years, and maybe there is something in the water. I don't know, or maybe they're just some really talented guys and gals. I've at the point in my career now where I've gone most of the way, and I can look back and really reflect. And I think over the last several decades, the biggest change agent has been a handful of guys that started 20 plus years ago that started getting outside of their bubble. I had a few guys in my department I was fortunate enough to work with. And then, of course, you mentioned Kurt earlier. Kurt and I have grown up in the fire service together from day one when he started actually out towards me in Fort Walton and ended up in Pensacola. And I started my career in Fort Walton. But since then, that myself, him, and a bunch of other people have just slowly been influenced by guys that have gotten outside their bubble. And I would probably say the one thing that affects the 850 area the most is that what started out with 1 and 2 and 3, 3 decades ago, I think has now multiplied to a lot of people, a lot of very talented firefighters. And after traveling over the last 10 years or so, doing a lot of teaching, it's really giving me perspective when I come back home and I realize how good these guys and gals are. And realize how fortunate I am to be surrounded by that type of culture that that you can take for granted when you're in it all the time. You don't think much about it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. We've got our pockets like everybody else of guys that aren't into the job. They come in for the paycheck, and that's just always going to be there, unfortunately. But I would say we have a higher percentage of guys that have really studied the job, that enjoy the job. And I would attribute that largely in part to the people before us and that provided those avenues to get outside of our bubble. And right now, the young guys, man, we got the guys from 10 to 10 years that are out there just eating it up, going to these conferences, and they don't realize it, but they're influencing us that are at the end of our career, towards the end of our career, to keep motivating us. So it's it's a handful of things, but I'd say probably those few. Nice.
No, and like you said, it's easy to take it for granted because when you don't, being in that, I can only imagine that. And like you said, I know that you have the turds as much as anybody, but man, it's just so invigorating almost when you go to those different stations and see the different, the fired up, guys that are into it. Excellent.
Go ahead. You see it a lot too. Just on the way home this afternoon from work, I get a call from one of my mutual aid departments asking if I had some hose straps because they've been trying out these different hose loads. I said, yeah, man, I'll swing them by. And then a captain on a ladder company across the bridge on the beach calls and says, hey, you coming this way? So they were already training together. So we stopped by on the way home this afternoon, spent about an hour just going over just ideas of like this modified Guston pack on a flat load. It's just really cool. But, you know, I'm fortunate enough to work in an area like that where, you know, guys are at, you know, 5 and 6 o'clock in the afternoon at various departments getting together and training, you know, and then I'm fortunate enough that they actually asked me to come by and hang out for a little bit. So,
Well, and one thing to point out is it's not an accident they called you because they probably expected you to say yes. You know, they have that relationship, that trust. You've built it, obviously, because they did call you.
Yeah, and I had the straps, so they needed the straps.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, fair enough. Okay, back to the notes here. I want to talk. Speaking of the 850, you started 850 Fireman, so kind of I wanted to hear about the origin of that and where it came from, and go.
So really, is it an equal part of myself and my younger brother? I believe. Yeah, I know you met my brother DJ. He's on the job as well. He works for Fort Walton, the department I retired from. He's a battalion chief now. He's been on the job probably going on 18, 19, maybe 20 years. So he and I obviously have gone through our careers together. He just started a little later than I did. And we were coming back from the Orlando Fire Conference, I want to say about 7, 8, 9 years ago. And we kept talking about wanting to do something on social media to help represent our area in the Panhandle, because we feel that, you know, we're kind of the redheaded stepchild of Florida. You know, when you say, hey, I'm from Florida, they immediately start thinking of Orlando and south of there. And we say,
right.
no, we're in Pensacola. And you're like, now Alabama? Well, yeah, kind of, sort of, but yeah, Florida.
Right.
So long story short, we decided to do a little thing on social media back before social media was really, you know, right when it was really ramping up, to do something to represent the 850. And that's really all it was. And that's all it continues to be. We've done some apparel stuff, but it's primarily for the local guys. And it's been a platform mostly for the guys and the gals from the 850, just to kind of represent where we're from. I mean, we're extremely proud of it. And, you know, and that's just kind of our way to show it here. Some people think it's a training group. They think it's more than what it is, but it really isn't. It's just, you know, firemen from the 850 sharing their love for the job.
I love it. It's take pride in where they're from, man, and it kind of just beyond department. You know, it crosses those boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeff Stone said that redheaded stepchild called the 850 is driving change in every fire station in America.
What's up there, Chief? Newly promoted Chief Jeff Stone.
Nice. So we've got a ton of comments. I won't even read them all. I'm just going to kind of scan through here because mostly it's hype for you being on. Game Time with the Best from Joey Hayes. Legend of the Screen, y'all, from Jacob Johnson. Brian Costello says Chief Ike and Stone are next level. And Nuggets from the Right Seat, Missouri Winter Fire School. Thanks for all the insight and nuggets, Chief Stone. That came from Dustin Duncan. Sean Duffy chiming in. Everybody, I mean, yeah, it's exciting. We're getting going here. So back to my notes, pulling up. I want to get into this because someone just mentioned it. The Nuggets from the Right Seat. But, before I get there, I want to talk with, before I bring people on the show, I try to research them. So I call people who have either seen your conference or been to a lecture or one of your friends. And but the thing I got from researching you is that whether they use this term or not, is that you have a high level of emotional intelligence. So what I want to know in your own words is, how did you develop or get to your current level of emotional intelligence?
Well, I'll take that as a compliment. By doing stupid shit and learning from it.
Fair. That's awesome.
I mean, I have a lot of empathy for people. I like to think I have a lot of empathy to begin with, but I certainly do for younger firefighters because, you know, my first 10 to 15 years were somewhat a roller coaster. You probably could have asked somebody early in my career if they thought I would have been a chief, and I'm sure just about everybody would have said no, including myself. I never had plans to be a chief. But I would say, you know, learning from the first 20 years and the last 10, especially the last probably 6 or 7, I've really done a lot of reflection and quite honestly matured, I guess, is a way. You know, I do a part of my class that I've added recently to my class about, you know, owning our mistakes and owning our actions and, you know, owning our consequences. And a lot of that has to do with maturity, which in my opinion, maturity equals wisdom. And it helps that, you know, that I have 3 children, you know, the youngest being 13, the oldest being 22. That's helped me develop. So, you know, and a side note too, I have kind of studied communication, you know, guys like John Maxwell and a handful of others. There's a local guy named Bob Murphy that teaches with the Studer Group, or he used to, and he does a lot of stuff. And I've really listened to him. and understanding that communication and how you react emotionally is either going to help what you're trying to do or it's going to hurt what you're trying to do. And the problem with firefighters, and I'm one of them, so I'm not knocking anybody. If anybody, I'm knocking myself, is that we're so passionate, and that passion equals emotion. And when the emotion comes out, sometimes it doesn't work the way we do. And when it doesn't work the way we do, we're really good on getting social media and really venting. And then when we vent on social media, we get validation on social media from people saying, yeah, you're right. When the reality is nobody really wrong, but it's not helping our cause because it just continues to emotionally drive us. So I'm kind of getting on a sidebar, but the point being, I guess, to answer your question, I think it has a lot to do with maturity. It has a lot to do with making a lot of mistakes in my career. It has a lot to do with guys that I trust, whether they're close personal friends or they're very close professional friends that have been very upfront and honest with me about my actions and what I did. And I guess fortunately I've listened to, I like to think I've listened to them, and that's helped me get to the point where I'm at now where, I don't think I'm that good at it, but I certainly think I'm better at 50 than I was at 40 and at 30. So
that's growth, man. That's awesome. Now you got my brain working here. Cause, my own career trajectory, if you'd asked if I'd ever been a battalion chief, people would have laughed early on in my carear. It'd been a punchline. Yeah. So I kind of want to know, was there a moment that changed it? Can you really pin it down, or was it just a gradual, like, I just kind of wanted some insight into the difference.
Yeah. If not me, then who? If not you, then who? That's where I kind of got. I was really fortunate. I spent almost 10 years as a captain, nine and a half years as a captain, and had the opportunity to promote or to test for battalion chief twice, and I passed it up. And I passed it up for two primary reasons. One, I really loved what I did. Being a boss on a rig and having the ability to influence people, small groups, was very special to me. And secondly, I worked most of my career for a battalion chief that I enjoyed working for. I learned a tremendous amount from him operationally, more so than I probably learned from anybody in my career. And the way he kind of led just kind of motivated me, and I had no reason to. And I really had no desire to be honest with you. And he got to a point where he retired, and I really didn't like the options of where I was going to go. Working in a smaller department, you can kind of figure out, the roadmap of where you're going. And I can tell you, we typically don't put strong leaders with strong leaders. They get kind of mixed matched. And I had, guys around me over the years that were encouraging me to do it. So that's really what led me to promotion. And then I spent the first 1 to 2 years, I want to say I pretty much struggled in the position, in my own mind, at least, because, I went from having the ability to control and influence small groups because I knew them so well, to being a battalion chief, to where you become separated quickly and you have to rely on your leaders, which are your captains and your lieutenants, to really affect that influence. So your ability to influence and your ability to lead I think it is much greater at a battalion level than it is a captain's level. And it threw me for a loop. And, the reality was I was off the rig, and that's a lonely place until you get used to it when you're not on the rig with everybody. Even at the point where I had asked my wife, I talked to her time and time again that I wanted to go back. She was not crazy about it. She had some comfort in me being off the rig for whatever, obviously not having to, I guess, worry. And I guess about a little over a year into it, she just looked at me one day and she goes, "You know what? Go back." Says, "You're going to be happy. Go back." So to make a long story short, I looked at the money and the longevity, and it just wasn't the best thing for my family, which was the best thing I did, because about 8 or 9 months later, which almost at a 2-year mark, I started getting a little bit of a comfort zone.
Nice.
And at that point, the job became a little bit more fun. Fast forward years later, I'm in a position now where I feel like I get to do things to help where I was at. So the guys at the company level, the guys, quite honestly, the most important ones, they're doing a lot of crazy shit and a lot of dangerous stuff when everybody else is sleeping. I have the opportunity to help those guys at now,
right,
in the position I'm at now. So for me, that, where I'm at now, because I somewhat unwillingly stepped into a position, it was one of the best things that happened to me in my career. So that was kind of my career path to being a battalion chief, I guess.
Right on. No, dude, that's And it's crazy because the biggest mind screw that I went through was going off the engine into battalion chief, getting in the buggy, not basically in my head not being a firefighter no more.
Yep.
And about 6 months in, I was ready to hang it up and say, this is not for me. But like you said, you get to the point where you understand your job is now taking care of the guys who take care of the patients. Your job is to take care of the guys who take care of the fires. And so, yeah, it's beautiful, man. Now you've gone on to gone from battalion chief to operations chief. How was that transition? That's one I haven't done, and I will swear on something that I will never do it. So, how was it?
Me too. My career retirement plan, and all my friends know this. A lot of the guys that I know, through the job know this was, I worked at Escambia County for 14 years as a firefighter over there. I started in the 90s, left and went back. Escambia is very unique. You could work part-time and do stuff like that. So I did that, and I had 14 years in a state pension. So my intent was to retire from Fort Walton and to go right backwards over there with the hopes of either being, in the core of the county where the fires happen, or way outside in the beaches where they don't happen. But either way, that was my plan. And leading up to that, I had an opportunity present itself as an operations chief. And, I guess to make the long short of it, after looking at everything, not just pay, but, my health and everything else, I can't tell you how many of my friends, my close friends, including my wife, reminded me that, hey, you're about to be 50 years old,
right,
and you want to ride backwards, and where you're going to fires on a regular basis. Like, it sounds fun, and I'm sure you still enjoy it and you can do it, but it's probably not in the best interest of your health long-term wise.
Longevity,
so those played into it. And then having the ability to possibly go to work as an operations chief for a department that already had a culture established, where you don't have to go in and explain to people why it's important to put the gear on the floor and get ready for the next fire in the firehouse. To having a chief that wanted a operational based guy to come in and wanted him to implement things that he thought was important operationally, and willing to give that person, which ended up being me, the latitude to do the things that I thought a fire department should do to set them up for success on operations. So once I started looking at it, it became kind of exciting of the opportunity to kind of do that. And I found myself once again in the position in my career as to whether I was going to take my own advice or not.
Right.
So the time, if not you, then who?
Right.
You think you can do it, and you're given a seat at the table. It's your opportunity to step up and do it. And if you don't do it, then just be careful how much shit you bitch about, because you're passing up the opportunity. And most likely somebody may get it that may not do it as well as you. So for me, stepping into the position, I've told guys a bunch, like, I've talked the talk for years, man. I've sat back like firefighters and criticized and said, I think chiefs should do this. I think they should do that. I would do it if I was near, but now I've got to walk the walk, and I don't know what the end answer is going to be. I'll tell you probably in 3 or 4 years.
Right.
I'm 12 months into it, and it's going well so far, for several reasons. One, I stepped into an organization that I've actually worked in off and on over the years, so I knew the guys. And two, we're taking it day by day. Some think we're going fast, but we're actually kind of going slow. And the guys have a heavy hand in the direction that we're taking the organization.
That's all. It sounds like a match made in heaven for you. Honestly, from the way you're describing it to me. So
it is. I say all the time, I couldn't be more fortunate for several reasons. One, I get to work for a great boss who, I've known for a very long time. I came through the fire service with. Secondly, and equally important, man, there's some great firemen at the department that I work at. The awesome. Midway Fire District, man. There's some solid dudes ethically. They're solid dudes when it comes to the job, and almost all of them, pretty much all of them, are wide open to want to get better. So really, you couldn't ask for anything better to step into. So
that's awesome. I got a question coming at you from Reese Eastham. He said, "Where was your time spent, engine or truck? How was it split, if both?"
All righty, that's a good question. I was on a Trenton.
Right. The Trenton.
Kyle said the other day, I was watching the podcast. My brother called me the other day. He's like, dude, you watch Kyle's podcast there on Firehouse? I said, no. He's like, you got to go watch it, man. He took everybody to school. So literally a couple of days ago in my office, I read it, and I heard Kyle say that. And he's right. Yeah. I was on a Trenton. So most of my career, I was assigned to a truck company, which is a 75-foot Quint. And the area that I worked in had the Fulton Beach area has 9 stations. Right outside of it, within a couple miles, we got another 6 or 7 stations. Typical suburban America fractured. But I worked on a truck company, but we did primarily engine work. Right. 95% of the times we were stretching lines. We were the ladder that didn't matter. We were confused half the time. But one thing we actually did really well was we stretched lines. So I joke around all the time that I was assigned to a truck company for the most of the time I was a captain, but really it's engine work. That's what we did. Right. So if I had to answer the question, on a truck, but engine work.
No, that's fair. And I think honestly, my experience, that's most of America.
It is. It really is.
It really, yeah. So thank you, Chief Stone. Enjoy your knowledge and experience. I had one in here I wanted to read, which is from Jeff Stone. I don't know if it's related or not, but he said, time for nuggets from the left front seat, the Chief's car, real world experience.
Say, Jeff, I'm working on that. That's my brother from another mother. We're not related, but we kind of are. I honestly, in all seriousness, I thought about that. But the crazy thing is I was a battalion chief for 11 years, right at 11, almost 12 years. And then now a year into this, and I don't even feel like I'm ready I don't feel like I have enough experience to do that yet. I mean, I could if you asked me to, but I don't feel comfortable. Maybe in another 5 or 6, I may.
Okay. I'll hold you to it. We got it on record right here. Jake Hill said the ladder that don't matter or the ladder with a bladder. So, all right. I'm pulling up the notes here. Oh, there's Kyle. Kyle chimed in and said, Chief Stone is my hero. All right. So, the nuggets from...
Kyle's my hero. I wish I could get his mustache and his deep voice. I'll be super cool.
Yes, that's all I can say is both. So, nuggets from the right seat. I have a bootleg copy. I won't say where I got it from, Kyle. And it's from PDX. I don't even know what year or how many revisions it has seen as you've worked on it. So I don't even know when it's from. But I took a whole bunch of quotes from it. And I'm going to just throw them at you and let you can deep dive on them, pass on them, chase squirrels, do whatever you want to do with the quotes. And I just want to kind of pick your brain about it. And, of course, anything the audience wants to throw as we talk about it. So you say, and I love this right at pretty much at the beginning of your presentation or early on, and it's easy to make decisions when you're not making the decision.
Yeah. So that's what we do as firefighters, right? I mean, we sit back, we Monday morning quarterback, and we're all guilty of it, myself included. I just use an example of myself saying, if I was the chief, I would do this, that, and the other. But the reality is, especially, so that class Nuggets is primarily the target audience of the Nuggets from the right seat is company officers. It's designed to give the company officers insight into what they're stepping into, because the vast majority of fire departments don't provide an officer development program. They certainly don't provide a mentorship program or some type of 2, 3, 4 week, couple month academy. It's pretty much like when I got promoted. You're a firefighter, you're driving one day and then you're moved to the right seat the next to be a captain. And then 2 shifts later, they bump you up to ride a battalion buggy. That's the way a lot of the American Fire Service works, which makes no sense. But the core of the class is designed primarily to be around the company officer. And what a lot of firefighters don't realize is that until you're in that right seat,
yes, and
you have to make those time compressed decisions, they don't realize how difficult it is. Now, ask anybody, you're shaking your head. Yes, clearly you've already been down this road.
This is solid.
Just about everybody you talk to will say the same thing. I mean, most firefighters, that you say this, that haven't been exposed to that, they'll listen to you and they'll be like, oh yeah, I mean, I can kind of see it, until they actually go through it, until they actually pull up to their first working structure fire. God forbid somebody's trapped or something outside the norm of just stretching 1 or 2 lines and putting it out. It's extremely stressful, and it's a lot more difficult to make those time compressed decisions on emergency scenes than what they think. And equally important, it's even more difficult at times to make some of the decisions within the firehouse. When you start talking about
there you go,
personal skills of firehouse, the personalities, especially if you're a young officer, it makes it even more difficult. So the point being is that, those decisions are easy to make a lot of times until you're the guy or the gal that has to make those decisions, and you realize quickly they can become somewhat complicated.
Right.
And you find quickly too that you may not be as good as you thought you were. And I'll use myself as an example, because I was a young officer. I got promoted at 29 years old to captain in my department. I started when I was 19. I got promoted at 29, which at the time was the youngest officer to get promoted in my department. Not a big deal. Small older city. We only been paid since like the 50s, so it wasn't like it was this big thing. But the point being, I was put in charge of guys that were in their 30s. The driver I was assigned to, it was my driver they gave me was 48 that I beat out on the captain's exam.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You want to talk about like an immediate challenge. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, decisions are way more easier when you're not making them. Just wait till you get in that position, you find out how difficult they are.
No, that's man. Rice Eastham is throwing another question at you, so I'll just take it here. He said, if you had to look back at your younger self, what would you tell yourself based on what you know now? He says as a lieutenant or junior officer. But yeah, old self to younger self, go.
Don't be a fucking dumbass.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. I mean, I'm joking, but there's actually some seriousness in that, And I was fortunate. I did have some guys who really told me to get my head out of my ass. I did spend the first part of my career, somewhat immature, and a lot of my guys that I learned with father figures in the fire service really got me on track. But in all seriousness, if I had to kind of lay it out there, I think probably one of the biggest things I would say is you mentioned earlier emotional intelligence. And I was a captain, from 29 to almost 39 years old. In my 30s, more mature, but I was very much a steamroller to a certain extent that, if you didn't see it my way or you couldn't convince me that your way was the best way to do it, then, I had about 2 seconds and I didn't listen to you and I moved on. And the way I communicated it, I think sometimes isolated myself and closed down relationships that would prevent me from building things later on, whether it was with other chief officers or company officers. So I would say that, like, one of the things I just did, I was just out in San Antonio doing a thing for the Fools. It's like one of the first times I've taught in the last year or so since I took this new job. But one of the things I put in there was you were talking about owning your actions, owning your behaviors, owning your consequences, and grow up. And when I had that on the screen, I was really talking about me. Like, what I went through probably, quite honestly, in my late 30s and my 40s is grow up and mature. Take a breath. You're not always going to get it the way you want to get it. And if it doesn't work, the question is, if it doesn't work, what are you going to do to make it work? Not to say screw them and move on, because that never works. So I guess the advice would be more along the lines of understanding how to mature and to react differently, and understand that if things don't go the way you plan, because with firefighters, it get frustrating. Like when somebody comes and tells you, like, we need to be having this standard flow, we need to have these low pressure nozzles so we can get this flow to meet, the standard industry. We need to look at different hose loads because, it all makes sense to us. Like when I explain it to you and I show you, like, you got to be an idiot if you don't fucking get it.
Right.
And when we do that, and that's the way we relay it, and we don't get the responses we want back, then we act even more emotionally. So, yeah, I mean, I guess when I go back and I share the same thing with many conversations with officers that I mentor now, is to think about your actions. Think about how you're going to react. And don't forget, when you do react, everybody is watching. Everybody, which means it's the firefighters that you have the honor to lead. So that 25-year-old kid or that 22-year-old kid, and they see the way that their officer, who they respect and they admire and they look up to and they want to emulate, and how they react to something they don't get that they don't get that they want. I mean, that's the sidebar that we don't even talk about, the impact.
The impact.
Because what those firefighters are going to do is, if they respect and they look up to you, don't be surprised 5 or 6 years later when they're emulating your behavior. And then you find yourself in my position in your 40s or 50s, and you're going back and you're having to wait a second, guys.
Hold up.
Like, I acted wrong. You shouldn't do it that way. Let me explain it to you. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Speaking from example, I've had guys that I've worked with and I've been guilty of it. So I work really, really hard to I guess try to give the advice of what the gentleman was asking, to the younger officers to, I don't know, hopefully try to avoid that a little bit, maybe.
No doubt. It's not just what would you tell yourself, it's what you're actually telling your young guys now.
Yes.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, man. No, that is. James Denny said, Chief Stone is seriously one of the most humble chiefs who cares. Glad to have met Chief Stone and understand that chiefs of his stature are among us, spreading knowledge. Kurt Isaacson says, I always thought you were right. They were wrong. So I have to give that one a laugh. And then the Stone Brothers quote on our daily roster, motivation is found when purpose is discovered. And that came from John Naninga. And Sean Kinsey said, as someone getting ready to graduate from academy, what is something that you look for in a candidate to hire?
Attitude and values. That's easy, man. I mean, we do it now in the organization I'm in now, and Fort Walton was really good at doing it as well. But that's a great question that I have got a lot of control over in the organization I'm at now, because we've hired 2 rounds of hires. We've put a ladder company on duty in the 12 months that I've been there, and we've kind of revamped our hiring process. And the hiring process looks really simple. It looks like this: we hire the person, not the qualifications. Don't get me wrong; the qualifications are important, but we have bypassed quite a few paramedics, and in Florida, that's a big deal. In the state of Florida, most of Florida is advanced life support, fire rescue. We're really no different up here in the Panhandle. We have, in my job, we have more paramedics and nurses than we do have EMTs. So, but we will pass up a paramedic in a heartbeat. In fact, we've not only passed up paramedics, we passed up people who aren't even EMTs, and we've hired just certified firefighters, which means for us as an organization that we have to invest time and money. Time and money in sending them to school, time and money to pay them overtime where they're in school, time and money where they're away from the fire department, not getting the fire training they actually need. But we did that because of the fact that we hired the individual. We hired the person because that person is what we're investing in. We're not investing in their qualifications, because the thing is if I get a guy with a good attitude and a good value system, we're good. We'll teach him. We'll teach him how to be a good fireman. It may take one guy a few years, or this guy a year. It doesn't matter. We'll get them there. But if you walk into our organization and your value system sucks, we ain't changing you. That's your parents screwed up on that one, I guess. I don't know. But when you get in, especially as a man, your value system, if it's not established, it becomes difficult. 2 things change your value system, in my opinion: religion and women.
Okay.
Seriously.
I like it.
You find religion, it'll change it. And you find a wonderful lady, that you fall in love with, they'll change you as well. But we're not in the business of doing that, and the fire service can't do it. Your attitude is your second thing, man. Have an all-in attitude. You come in and have an all-in attitude. I used to tell guys all the time, I'll give you a 10-year experienced guy. He's got a crappy attitude, but he's really good at a fire. He knows exactly what he's doing. Or you can take the 1-year probie guy that doesn't know his ass from a hole in the ground, but he's all in. He's physically fit. He's got a great attitude. Which one you would take? If you'd asked me as a young captain, I would have told you the 10-year guy. Now I'm taking the 1-year guy all day long. The 10-year guy, I'd put on a damn chair outside the engine bay and pick him up on the way out. And that's a small percentage of what we do. So, yeah, I guess I'm starting to ramble now.
No, it's beautiful, Chief. Keep it coming, man. That's what makes the scrap so good, is these rabbit holes. So just don't ever, go.
Yeah, attitude and values, man. I mean, there's more to it, but I mean, if I had to narrow it down, I would absolutely say that. And I say this, I'm super proud of the organization I'm at now. And our last group of hires, I mean, that's exactly what we did. We bypassed people with higher qualifications, and we looked at it seriously. Like, what do you bring to the table to make this organization better and to make our people in our organization better?
Now, this utterly...
a lot of firefighters don't realize we dug that deep into that, but in our interview board did that. And we went with, we went with what they recommended, after a lot of vetting and discussions about the guys that we were hiring.
No, this utterly fascinates me, because I've said it now since promoting on 3 hiring classes now, interview panels and tons of interviews. What do you have a metric or a system? And I think this would be so helpful if you can articulate it, how you measure those values. Is it a gut feeling? Is it a art? I don't know what I'm trying to ask is, how do you identify those values in this hiring system?
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's a good question. One of our fire commissioners, Bob Murphy, I mentioned him earlier. I've known Bob for quite a few years. He's actually one of the original volunteers in Midway Fire District, which, for those of y'all that don't know, Midway Fire District sits right outside of the city of Pensacola. And if you've ever been to a conference and you cross over from the city into the beach, you kind of cross over into the district where Midway is. But he works for the Studer Group, which is an evidence-based healthcare leadership group that they teach leadership based on evidence, which means they collect statistics and they basically they teach leadership based on objective facts. And he actually sent me something a while back about how to measure those very qualities that you have, because it's a great question. And I don't have a good answer to it, because he and I were having the same discussion. I'm like, I don't know. That's a good question. Like, we just ask really good questions, and we do our best to make the judgment calls with a collective group of 4 or 5 guys on a hiring board, and then we make judgment calls. But he And I wish I would have thought about it. I could have it here and give you a better answer, but he literally sent me some stuff that actually measures those types of things.
Well, I'm going to get his info from you so that I can have him as a guest on the Scrap, because that utterly fascinates me, is how to find and identify attitude and values more than just what they come and tell you on the interview. Although I will say this, firemen are great at seeing through bullshit, but they still, I want to know anybody who's put the research into it or had success with it. Lots of questions coming at you here I'm trying to find questions, guys, so give me 1 second while I'm scanning here. Coming from a young officer, how do you go about a chief that only does it his way? Other firefighters are getting bad attitude, a very small volunteer department. Tough question.
That is a tough question, because it's that you can ask that same question and you have varying answers based on the personality of the individual that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
I would say that the way you communicate with your chief, understand first and foremost, you got to meet their expectations of your battalion chief, right? Or your immediate report. If you can meet those expectations, or better yet, exceed those expectations, your life gets easier. And I would imagine, I've only been in career, I've never been a volunteer, but human behavior is the same.
Right.
And I would imagine that same analogy would apply to volunteers as well. So you're probably wondering where I'm going with that. This is where I'm going. When your boss is happy and you're meeting their expectations, do you think that may open up that communication chain with them?
Nice.
Do you think that may start creating what I call in my classes, and I didn't think of it, I saw some class, but a communication platform where you now have the ability to communicate a little bit better with them because they're a little bit more open to listen to what you have to say. Once you get to that point, how you communicate that, as like ideas or thoughts or things for him to think about or her to think about, as opposed to saying, well, this is the way I think it should be done because it's not being done correctly. A lot of times we will say things, but we won't realize what we're truly saying or what they perceive that we're saying.
They're hearing, right?
What they're hearing, right? So you need to communicate in a way, and it's tough. And honestly, it takes study and communication. It takes maturity and wisdom and figuring out what doesn't work and trying things again. But you got to communicate.
Hold up. I lose you, Chief?
And creating those platforms are huge, because if you can't do that, then you're probably never going to get to the point where they're going to feel it's important for them to listen to what you have to say. So it's all about building those relationship platforms. And I screwed them up early in my career. I did. I handled them wrong, and those doors got closed for me, and fortunately, as I've gone, I realized how important that is, that, you don't always have to be right. I mean, you really don't. What's your end game? What are you really trying to do? I could give two shits about winning an argument, to be honest with you.
Right on. I love this.
About what we're trying to get.
Yes.
So,
it's something I read. The difference between being right and being effective. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes they're the same, but sometimes anyway, I love it. And the other part that I want to platform on that, when you talk about communication platform, if you do achieve that and you are working on that relationship and open up that line of communication and you're not seeing progress, you might need to look in the mirror. So it may not be the chief who's the problem. So
I would 100% agree with that. Yeah.
Let me see what I've got here. For the new Step Up BC, how do you manage distractions on the fire ground so that you don't miss the small details that matter? They're throwing some tough ones, brother. You're not getting any soft.
Yeah, I'll let you in a little secret, man. You don't. Listen, you want to be humbled really quick as a battalion chief or an officer. Videotape your calls. Wear a helmet cam, wear a GoPro. Speaking from experience, I say this all the time. It's a great question. I say this all the time. Man, I videotaped the vast majority of my calls through a helmet cam and a GoPro. Where I worked, we didn't go to fires every day. We went to just enough fires to say we went to them, and we went to not enough to say we needed to go to more. But I would venture to say that we did a decent amount where you could get experience. And I can tell you that when you go back and you watch these videos and you realize the things that you miss, it was one time a year and a half before I retired, I missed a close call. It literally evolved in front of my camera, and I was kind of, my peripheral vision was to the left, and the guys were bailing out of a door that was lighting up, a room that was lighting up to my right. I never even saw it. And you want to talk about getting kicked in the gut. And at the time, I had 9 years under my belt as a battalion chief, 9 years as a captain. You would think that you would catch stuff, but the reality is that you don't all the time. It's so fast and evolving. So I guess what I would say is, 1, be patient. 2, study the job. Attach yourself to people that have done it before you. Listen to their advice. Use their advice. Videotape your calls. Go back. Reevaluate those calls. Share with your people your mistakes. Who gives a shit what people are going to think? Trust me, you gain more respect and trust by sharing with them your mistakes and what you did wrong and what you're going to do to fix it by setting the example, right?
Nice.
But I would certainly say the last 10 years since the videotaping, with all the technology, that's been one of the biggest benefits for me that I encourage people to do. Most of my videos, I've only used a handful of them for my classes. I never post them on social media. I just don't. It's just not me. But I use them for, interdepartmental, intercompany type training. And it's been big time beneficial.
I can only imagine. And Smoothbore Cartel Kyle chiming in says, facts, the camera does not lie.
There's no doubt. And it'll humble you quick, man. I'm telling you. When you think you know your shit, go watch your own videos and you'll realize that the small details, not only the small details you miss visually, but you're missing what you hear.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, I didn't hear that radio traffic, But it's part of the job, man. It is, man. When you go to work, man, it can be a complicated job when you're under stress. We build playbooks, training playbooks, and in the playbook, we've got a simple thing that says every single play, keep everything 3 steps or less. I don't know where I got that from. I don't. I just know in my experiences, if I add any more than 3 steps in a process under stress, what is simple sitting in the bay becomes complicated under stress.
Love it.
So everything that we do, we try to build with less than 3 steps in mind, because of the fact that we know that we start exceeding that, no matter how good you are, you're going to miss things. It's no different. Back to the original question. It's no different than the battalion chief trying to process 5 or 6 things, and within a 20-second period is extremely difficult. And the only way that you close the gap on that is studying the job and gaining experience. If you're not working in a busy department, you're not going to fires every single day. You have to do the other side.
Yes, preach, man. You're getting me fired up just listening. I like it. Solid stuff right there. Tyler Whitfield sums it up beautifully. No, we don't videotape, but just the other day we had a working structure fire, and during our critique of it, we played the audio back from dispatch, just to record with all the dead space taken out, which wasn't a lot, but it's humbling just doing the audio and me having to admit my mistakes there to the crews, which, you have to own them so you can get better. That's all you can do.
Yeah, that's one of the first questions I ask officers when we're doing officer development, and I do a lot of mentoring. I mean, not an official mentoring, but I talk to a lot of officers. The guys have just come up through the ranks, and tell you, man, videotaping is one. And the other thing that I tell them that we can all do, I say, you ever pulled your tape? I said, what do you mean? You ever pulled your tape from dispatch and listen to yourself? No, said, dude, do it. Like you could have a perfect fire and everything look good, but listen to yourself, and you'll sit back and you're like, oh shit. Did I talk that fast?
Right.
That was one of the things for me. I listened to videotapes. I got tons of audio tapes, and one of the things that I did not realize that I did was that as the incident ramped up, I increased my. Hear my dog barking.
They're good. I love dogs.
I increased my speed of my conversation, which made it at times sometimes difficult to understand.
Sure.
It wasn't difficult to understand, but when I look back and go say, Chief, what was that? And I go listen to my tapes, and I realize that my speed of my
just
of
the
my
tempo, just the rapid fire. Yeah.
Not necessarily in the voice or anything, just how quickly that I talk. Kind of like I'm talking now, I get in a rush and I'm just clicking. But I would have never known that if I didn't pull it. I literally wouldn't have known that if I didn't pull the tapes. And now with videotaping, you can hear yourself on the radio. So yeah, man, videotapes and dispatch tapes, go pull them and listen to yourself. That you're missing the boat on improving if you don't do that.
Beautiful. Man, we're rolling. I'm not even using my notes. We haven't even touched the notes I made for the questions to ask you, but I'm going to go right into this one because you kind of touched on it right there. So it's a good segue, because you said, if you do not, as a leader, have a way to measure or have self-awareness, you will not grow as a leader. I love this quote. Go.
It's tough, man. It's tough. So you want to create an environment that where people feel comfortable talking to you. So, I tell officers all the time, especially new officers, you got to tell, part of your expectations need to be that, like, you expect people to talk to you. Well, you got to make it a little clearer than that. So let me back up a little bit. I'll give you an example. So as an operations chief coming in, I'm big into expectations. I'm big into writing things down, just because I understand that if you don't write them down, they're not as clear, and you kind of position your people to fail because they're having to guess or actually remember what you said. So I like writing things down. Nothing too crazy, just the basics. So I had like a one-page expectation for my battalion chiefs right after I came in the fire department. And one of the biggest expectations is I expect you to tell me what I need to know that I may not want to hear. I don't want you to worry about hurting my feelings. That my expectation for you is tell me what I have to know that nobody else is going to tell me. And the same thing holds true as a company officer, except you handle it a little bit different way. I call it an inviting dissent. So create an atmosphere that when you get back from calls, hey man, what do you think? What did you see? Don't be afraid to ask questions. I want to share what I'm thinking with you. When you invite dissent and you get guys to ask you why you do what you do, it opens up a whole nother realm of communication. It opens up a whole nother realm of trust where you can have those conversations. Because when you make a mistake or you stretch to the wrong direction and you didn't quite realize it, but you got guys that are willing to question you on it, because they're going to question you because they know that you're not going to feel like your authority is challenged. That you welcome it, because you want to hear it, and you want to have those discussions over a cup of coffee. And you're the type of guy that if you made a mistake or you didn't make the right decision, you want to know, because collectively you want to make the best decision for the group so the shit doesn't happen again.
Right.
If you build that atmosphere, that is, in my opinion, that is a way to create a mechanism of creating that self-awareness. And it's not easy to do. Like I'm doing an organization on that now. I mean, in my position, it's even more difficult because I'm at the second highest position in a small department, the second highest position. So trying to communicate that all the way down the ranks is a little bit more challenging. But, you lay it out in written expectations. And for me, I do something that a chief did with me. His name is Mike Dutton. He's a fire chief I worked for many years, retired out of DC, came to Fort Walton. He's probably not watching this. I wish he was, because I tell him how great of a fire chief he was, but I learned a tremendous amount. But he used to come visit us on Fridays. And I remember as a captain, when the fire chief would come to my firehouse, and he'd sit down and he'd talk to me, and he'd be like, man, what's going on? And it was our opportunity with no chain of command to ask questions, to vent, or just to bullshit about things that didn't matter. And that's something I learned from him that I do at the department I'm at now.
Nice.
Try to help build that atmosphere where people feel comfortable talking, asking questions, asking the why behind what we do. Because being that the fire service is very much, it's not authoritarian, but it's very, paramilitary. So there is a lot of like, well, you get your orders, and especially if you're down here, you don't ask questions up here. We just don't do that. So the bosses and the leaders of the fire service have to create, that conduit so that you get that reciprocating feedback. And of course, it starts with your upper leaders. For me, it's my battalion chiefs. They have got to understand the philosophy, and they have got to be in line. We all have to be in line, because if we're not, we're just fighting against each other.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's not easy, but it's a big deal,
Marshall Boyd summed it up with his comment. He said, amazing advice, and it all starts with open, honest relationships. And I'll be honest with you, man, it takes, I don't know the right word. It's not a lack of ego. It's an ego in check to be able to hear those mistakes or critiques or honesty thrown at you. There's not everybody can handle it, because the defensive walls will go up for many.
Yeah. And it's tough too. And I'll tell you one of the biggest challenges I think I've faced the latter part of my career. And it's really weird, because I'm going to share with you something that I really haven't talked much about, honestly, until you just said it, is you can work extra hard to have those communications, right? I have no ego. I really don't. I mean, if you talk to my friends, there's no ego in it. I mean, some people may think differently that don't know me, because as you go through your career, you create a reputation based on your actions, mostly on the fire ground, and some, quite a bit in the firehouse. But the ability to communicate and to put your ego aside Yet the reputation that you have as you build it throughout your career, if you're an assertive fire officer, if you're the person on the fire ground, whether you're a company officer or a battalion chief, if things aren't going right, you step in and you make them right, or at least to the best of your ability when people are being passive. That reputation that you have of being that guy actually trickles over into the firehouse because people are hesitant at times because of your reputation to be open. You know what I'm saying? Does that kind of make sense?
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, yes.
There's a tough balance. I was dealing with something today that at the firehouse, I won't say what, because it's not a big deal, but I'm like, where did they get that from? Like, we've done nothing, like anything like that. Like, and it reinforces the importance for me to go out and over communicate certain things to certain groups, because as you said it earlier, when we were talking about firefighters, just the way they are, they're going to sit around and we do come to our own conclusions pretty quick, sometimes right, sometimes wrong.
Right.
I think where I'm kind of rambling, but I think a lot of where the senior leadership misses is that we get so frustrated at the top that we say, you know what, fuck it, I'm not going to exert all that time. Well, I mean, that's certainly a choice. I'm not there at that point yet. I choose not to.
Right.
I choose to go the other direction. Unfortunately, working in a small department, I can get away with it. If I was a big department, I don't know how buddy of mine works in Palm Beach County, 2,000 firemen. I don't even know how you control that dynamic. Fortunately, I don't even try to even think about it because I don't have that problem.
Well, I think part of the answer you said earlier was, you said my experience has all been in paid departments. I've never worked in volunteer, but the principles apply across the levels. I think the principles apply across the numbers also. And you said it, I think you really articulated it well when you said it's easy to just throw in the towel, but it's an active choice to not. And so,
yes.
And
no true statement.
Beautiful. Stone expectations. Okay, we got a lot of people commenting. Amazing advice. And also, we got that one. Okay, Robert Ramirez says, solid stuff, solid content. Audio and video recordings are a great tool for personal growth and professional development. They provide perspective and allow us to read our label from the outside of the jar. Good analogy. Awesome. Howard Reinwald said, Stone expectations, 51 rules of engagement are in the East County Fire. A promotional step is being able to recite his 51 rules of engagement. And he's answering, a guy said, can you give a few more expectations you would hand out as an officer to the crew?
So there's kind of two different categories, right? So you have expectations of an officer, okay? And then what Chief Reinwald was mentioning was rules of engagement, which are a little different,
okay,
but the same. Rules of engagement, and I can't take credit for it, quite honestly. One of my close friends, Kurt Isaacson, started doing it many years ago. And I'm not a smart guy. I don't reinvent the wheel. I saw what he was doing. We had many conversations. I said, well, that makes sense. The rules of engagement are centered around things that are so critically important that we need to do the same time every single time across the board to fight complacency and to be operational discipline, plain and simple.
Nice.
As opposed to an expectation of an officer saying, hey, I expect you to be here to work at a certain time. I expect you to make sure your gear's on the floor, ready to go, blah, blah, blah. So they do kind of intertwine. Rules of engagement, at least in my application, I believe in Chief Weinroll's as well, is all the things that are so vitally important that we have to do. You're going to wear your hood on gas leaks, period, point blank. Why? Because if shit blows up, at least most of your head is protected, whatever the case is, right? We're actually developing the rules of engagement right now in the Midway Fire District. We have yet to implement them. In my previous department, we did implement the rules of engagement across the board, which helped a lot on consistency, but they were all the crazy little things that we fight complacency, right?
Right.
They could be the way we stretch. They could be the way we wear gear. They could be the number of hand lights you're required to carry. They could be your tool assignments, your seat assignments, everything that includes it. So they both intertwined together, but they're somewhat separate, but they both fall in line with the expectations, I guess you'd say.
I answered the question beautifully. And Marshall Boyd also said, I could listen to this, and he put it in quotations, rambling daily. So, it's very, very good stuff. To the notes, pulling them up. You have to have a similar value system to your firefighters, or they are not going to trust you. That's another quote I pulled from Fire Nuggets. The Nuggets.
So there's three things that I go over in the Nuggets class, and there's a bunch of different ways to create influence. Three primary areas I found that I think work really well, and I think they work so well that when I was a chief at, battalion chief in the city of Fort Walton Beach, we actually implemented them into our leadership standard operating guideline.
Nice.
precondition of influence is the trustworthiness, expertise, and attractiveness. Trustworthiness is building trust. A lot of things that we can do to build trust, and they continue to build trust. And of course, we can tear it down in a very short time. Second condition of influence was expertise, and that's essentially knowing our job. And it's perhaps the most important one, because the reality is that as a boss, as a leader, you have to lead your people into some very dangerous situations, and decisions and the things that you do at times could make a difference whether we get out in one piece or not. The last condition of influence to create influence is attractiveness, and the attractiveness is your value system. So the takeaway on that is that if your value system is not consistent with the people that you lead, don't be surprised if they don't trust you. If they don't trust you, don't be surprised if you don't create the influence. It's very, very simple. So if you believe in integrity, you believe in honesty, and the boss that you're leading is a shit, then don't be surprised when that boss doesn't create the influence they need to create. It's plain and simple. Now, here's the good news, is the vast majority, in my opinion, of firefighters are cut from the same mold. The vast majority of them have a good value system. They may vary, but the value system is consistent. It's good. And the vast majority of firefighters make a lot of mistakes, and they learn from them, and they get back on track. But the takeaway is, as I'm sure you and everybody else, there is a small percentage in the fire service that severely lacks values.
Right.
And those that do, it makes it extremely difficult for firefighters to follow and trust, or to ever build trust. So if you really want to affect influence, you really want to be that leader, then you have to have a value system consistent with the people that you're leading.
That's
just my opinion.
No, it's beautiful, man. Because until I listened to that recording, I had never heard it or put in that frame of reference. You always hear about values, mission, vision, values. You have to have values, but the congruence of your values with those you are trying to lead and influence or build trust with is beautiful. Okay,
I agree. Yeah, definitely.
You have to, yes. How we react and pick we've kind of touched on that. When we screw up, because we all will, how we react is really what matters. Go for that one. I know we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I still wanted to get another rambling in on that one.
So one of the takeaways, I think I would apply this to the last probably 7-8 years, and maybe, but definitely the last 5 to 7 years, is how you react. And really the conversations that we have about it, they could be no different than the conversations you have with your kids. I've got 3 kids. I've got a daughter who's 22. I've got a son who's 16 and a son who's 13. I've had many conversations with them about how you react. We're going to make mistakes. And I tell firemen all the time, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes in your life. You're going to make mistakes in the fire ground. But the question is what are you going to do with them? We all have heard that before, but there's no truer statement. And especially for leaders, how we react and what we do is not only important to get back on the right track, but I mentioned it earlier, it's important because everybody's watching.
Right.
So how I react as a father, and what I do is a huge deal, because my 3 children are watching me, and they're most likely are going to mimic my behavior and my wife's behavior and how we handle these issues. It's no different at the firehouse. And for me, in the last 5 or 6, 7 years, I've really, really thought about how I react. So, we all have emotional triggers, right?
Sure.
Those emotional triggers are things that, you immediately, as soon as you start talking, they're gonna put you on edge. Certainly right now, politics is probably one of the biggest ones. I was having a discussion with my wife. It doesn't take but 2 seconds before it puts somebody off on edge when they're talking about it. Whatever it is at the firehouse, whatever those emotional triggers are, we have to be prepared as leaders at how we're going to react. So I'll give you an example. And most likely the guy's probably not going to be watching this, but he's an awesome dude. He's our union president. His name is Rick. The dude is super squared away, and we've got a great relationship. But he's kind of like me. He's kind of driven. He has his opinion, man. And if you step on the wrong thing, he's going to tell you.
Sure.
Which I love and I respect about the guy, because it makes my job a lot easier. But equally, I got to do the same thing with him.
Right.
So the last months, we've had a couple conversations, and we've both kind of stepped on each other's toes. And it's like, well, how are you going to react, Shannon? That's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to react emotionally, which is never going to get you anywhere? Because quite honestly, both he and I see things the same way. We really do. Like at the end of it, we actually do. But the question is if I respond emotionally or I immediately respond without thinking, now what position am I going to be in?
Right.
Where is my communication and my relationship platform with this guy? All based on an emotional response, right? So I use that as an example, but I think that's kind of a parallel with a lot of what we do, especially if you're that motivated mid-level guy. When I say mid-level guy, I'm going to define him as the 10 to 15 year guy, right?
Right.
That you've been around long enough, you've gained a great amount of experience, you're really getting past the dangerous stage. I'm going to call the dangerous stage about 7 years.
Okay.
You really think what you're doing, but you got a lot to learn. You get to the 15, you're like, oh man, okay, I really kind of get it now. That's when your super influence starts to really kick in my opinion. If you really know what you're doing, your ethical values in the firehouse are good, your operational stuff is squared away and good. At about the 15-year mark, your influence just skyrockets. What I don't think people take into consideration is it skyrockets down. People look up to you, they follow you, they want to do what you do, they listen to you. Have you given much thought to how it skyrockets up? Right?
Right.
So think about it. So that equal influence, we don't think about it, but the guys at the top are watching as well. But how we handle our relationships going up and our emotional responses going up may just totally shut down that communication line with them. Right?
No,
Does that make
beautiful.
sense?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Oh,
So, I mean, you go back to the question we answered earlier, what would you do differently? That would probably be one of the biggest things I would do differently is if somebody could tell me, say, hey, man, slow your roll a little bit, baby. Think about what you're going to say. Like, you're right, you get it, you're upset, but how are you going to communicate it so those guys understand that it's important for them to hear? We in the fire service, the guys that are driven like all of us, it's the same story, man. And in our defense and their defense, well, when you give a shit about it, that's the way we react. Just understand that the way you react and the reaction you get back, don't be surprised. I mean, it's one thing I'll say now that I've said for like the last 7 or 8 years, and I think it has to do with just getting older and reflecting and looking back. The behavior of firefighters is very predictable.
I love that. I love that. Go ahead. I want you to expound.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like being a parent, right? Have you ever talked to one of those parents that's raised kids?
Right.
You know, and they're giving you advice, and they'll tell you the same thing. They're like, well, you know, we've already raised kids. We kind of tell you what to expect on most things, not everything, but most things.
Sure.
You know, and if you're smart, you listen to them. Like I can tell you, I'm going to go into a rabbit hole. So I had my neighbor. He lives right behind me here. He's probably about 20 years older than me, maybe a little less. He's had 5 kids. And I remember having a conversation with him about 12, 13 years ago. He says, man, if there's one thing I would do differently is I would eliminate negative kids out of my lives. If I just got a gut feeling, they're done. They're gone. They're dead to me. I'll remove them. I'll deal with them. And since then, whenever I have even an inclination that there's a negative influence on one of my kids, I just remove their friends. I like to think I've been right so far, but you know, so what if I'm not? I'm the parent. When they turn 18, they can make their own decisions. But the point being is that the point I'm getting at is I listened to somebody who went down the road 20 years before me, right?
No, 100%.
Is it any different in the fire service? Now the senior guys don't always get it right, but I'm going to let you in a little secret. They do get it right most of the time. You just may not quite understand their perspective, but most of the time they get it right. So when they say something, it's worthy of, wow, well, let me think about that a second. Maybe let me vet that off somebody else. And if you vet it off of another senior guy, you'll figure it out really quickly whether it's the right thing or not.
Wow. No, that's solid, man. I love it. Dude, I'm telling you, there's so much. Lots of questions coming. I don't know what kind of time frame you were on. Yes, solid. Trying to ask questions. Yeah, James Denny put it real good. Trying to ask questions, but it's being answered as y'all go along. This is gold. Man, there is a lot of gold here. We do, yeah. Everyone rotates. I like it. Okay, so I want to move. I want to ask a question because I always research, like I say, my guests coming on, and so I asked. But I heard about your tattoos, basically. That you have tattoos, and each tattoo has a story. However much detail you want to go into on them.
I do actually. Well, I mean, the guys that know me, I hide them well, I guess, but you know, I'm pretty tattooed up. But yeah, they do, they really do. And this arm here, I know you guys can't see it, but this arm here is kind of like my fire department arm. I've got things tattooed, and I can tell you, you know, just about everybody who's watching this will know what FTM, PTB means, you know, in the fire service, you know, and I got that in a point in my career about 10 years ago where I was done, man. I was done with the fire service, but I was done. I got to think about how I'm going to word this, but I can say it, I guess. I was done with the fucking mutts, man. I was done with the bullshit, and I wasn't taking it anymore. And And, and anybody who has tattoos will tell you, most people that have tattoos will tell you they're kind of your life story, So I can't really show you on this, but my tattoos are the same way. If you were to look at it, I could tell you where I was at in my career and what I was thinking and everything else. And I don't regret a single one of them.
Awesome.
I don't, because they tell a story, and and people that don't like tattoos, that's cool. Good on you, man. You do you, I do me. I don't have a problem with it, But yeah, I mean, I just as a chief, I hide them well. For no other reason other than the fact that I respect the rank, I respect the position, and my father was a fireman, and he retired as an operations chief, as a deputy chief of operations. And I grew up watching him and the other chiefs and the way they dressed and the way they conducted themselves. And I guess that, took it from him. And I do the same thing that he does in respecting the position. And I'm proud to say my brother does the same thing as a battalion chief.
No, that's awesome. Anyhow,
they're freaking tattoos, man. Ain't no big deal.
That's awesome. Just tattoos. Every one of them has a story.
Everybody's got them anymore, right?
I always like to ask the guests if they have a book or books that they think firefighters should read.
Yeah, man, there's so many good ones out there, but I'll tell you my favorite one, the last so many years is Chief Scott Thompson's Functional Fire Company. I was fortunate enough to meet Chief Thompson several years back, and in this new position, I've reached out to him. He's kind of been a mentor of mine. He shared with me stuff, his book is nothing short of amazing. What he did in his book is his philosophy and his outlook. It was like I was reading my own stuff, except he was way smarter than me.
Absolutely.
I'm like, that's what I've been talking about. I'm like, oh, that's how we can apply it. So, I mean, it's all centered around the most critical part of the American Fire Service. It's the functional fire company, which for me, I am critical on chiefs, even though I'm a chief, that I do think we lose sight of that at times. And Chief Thompson and his book and the way he lays it out, for me, has motivated me as a chief to make sure that I don't lose sight of it, because, at the end of the day, that's why we do what we do, to support, the guys in the streets. It has nothing to do with anything else other than when they're in the streets on the most complicated thing, they have the resources and the training and everything to do to hopefully position them to make a difference. And his book is all centered around how to do that. So I would encourage anybody, whether it's a company officer, or certainly at a chief level, to read the book. It's hands down one of my favorites. And I guess secondary to that, when you start talking about leadership and communication, is any of John Maxwell's books. 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership.
Nice.
Has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with the American Fire Service. Has everything to do with leading human beings, which is what we do.
Right. So, preach.
So those are probably my two top current ones. Yeah.
No, dude, you get me going on Functional Fire Company. I honestly think that it should be mandatory reading for every firefighter in the American Fire Service. So,
I think it should be mandatory reading for every chief in the fire service. I bought one for all my battalion chiefs.
Nice, very nice. Moving and of course, like you said, Maxwell. Everything Maxwell does is gold. I do like his leadership gold. In fact, he wrote it like 20. It's like, I don't know. It's like his 80th book or something, but it encapsulates a whole lot of his other ones into one book. So here we are. Sorry, man. I'm like still reeling from everything. So much knowledge, so much rambling that it was awesome, man. So many rabbit holes. On the scrap every week we do a thing. It's called the 5 questions for firefighters. There are no correct answers. There are just your opinions, and the answers are completely your opinions. The points are handed out by me, and they're completely arbitrary. So, Chief Shannon Stone, are you ready for the 5 questions for firefighters?
Yeah, man, I'll do my best.
All right, here we go. Question number 1. What is the number one issue facing the modern fire service?
Oh, that's easy, man. Training. It always is, and it always will be. Plain and simple. It is a foundation of what we should do, and what we need to do. It's really simple, and the challenge is it's, God, you can break it into so many challenges. You can say it's a generational challenge, but I don't know if that would apply, because 15, 20 years now, you're going to have the same discussion and say it's a generational challenge. You could say it's an organizational challenge, because every organization's hold different expectations. You can say it's systemic in the fire service, because I said in Portland years ago when I was so lucky that, Cody asked me to speak out there, kind of like you asking me here. I didn't know why I got there, but I was going to jump on it. But I said at the firemanship conference, I said, if chiefs would value accountability over loyalty and put training their higher priorities, that's the day you're going to start seeing the line of duty deaths in the American fire service decrease. I honestly, sincerely believe that.
No, that's
dude. Anybody wants to argue the fact, just look at I'm a kind of a facts data driven type dude, especially more so as I move on throughout my career. But look at the facts. Look at since we've been recording since the 70s and why we've been dying. If you know why we've been dying, it should piss every firefighter off in this country because of the fact that they are predictable, which means they are preventable. We all know this, right? So I go back to your original question. What's the most important thing in the American fire service? Training. Or maybe it should be accountability. Maybe it should be expectations. But I think the real challenge is how to get everybody to understand that they have to be really good. Maybe you can't be, not everybody can be Tom Brady, but everybody can be really good.
No,
and the gap from being average to being really good, it's simple. It's work. Where does the work come from? The expectations of the organization.
Damn, this is like a keynote right here, man. I love it, dude. 100% max points. Just facts, yes. Kyle said it, facts. There's a bomb flying by, truth bomb. Max points easily, and I just completely lost my train of thought as I read what everybody's saying to you. That I always have to write down the time frame of when someone does that because that's probably going to be the soundbite for the promo of the podcast. That was beautiful, sir. Okay, I'm sidetracked. Number 2, what is the thing you are most excited about for the future of firefighting?
Training.
I like the tie-in.
No, I'm serious. Think about it. Listen, I'm going to use you as an example, man. Your podcast is going to be going out as training in my fire department. I mean, the individuals, the heavy hitters you bring on here, I'll mention, I said Kyle earlier, he's the most recent example. I was literally talking to somebody today. I said, dude, I'm going to send this out to my department. The UL studies are cool, but what's even cooler is when guys drink a cup of coffee, listen to 2 guys talk and recite studies and how they play into interior attack and how it affects the environment and all that. That's exciting, man. Because the fact that what our firefighters have access to in training these days is so much different than what it was when I went through in 1989.
Oh, without a doubt.
Not only that, I think the encouraging thing too is my perspective is here in the Panhandle of Florida in the A50 area, from Pensacola to Tallahassee area. So it may be a little bit skewed, but my excitement, as a guy that's on a tail end of his career, is seeing a lot of these young guys. Just like I mentioned today, the guys calling me at the station want to come by and look at hose loads and stuff. I mean, these are young guys. They're in their 30s. They're young. They're the most pivotal leaders in the American fire service right now. And these guys are excited, enthusiastic. They're seeking education. They're getting on social media. So yeah, I would say that training is one of the toughest issues, but it's one of the most exciting issues because we've never been in an environment or a time in our country where the guys have just immediate access to some of the most phenomenal training, and this podcast being a great example. The tough part is navigating the bullshit.
Yes.
Because talk about, the credibility and how Fire Engineering and Firehouse magazine used to be the ones that vetted the information that got out. It's totally out the window. It's kind of like journalism.
Yep.
Since
journalism
used to be objective and just shared the facts. Now it's their fucking truth. What the fuck is that? It's the same thing in the fire service that's happening. So it can be a double-edged sword. But training, in my opinion, for the next generation is the most exciting thing because of the opportunity that exists in front of them and what we can do with it.
I love it. I love the way you tied it back into the first answer and just kind of the flip side of the coin almost beautiful. Number 3, pulling it up like I haven't done these enough to know them. Best rank or position to be in the fire service.
That's easy, man. It's a company officer. For me, at least. For me, I mentioned earlier that I spent, 9, almost 10 years as a captain. Hands down, best time of my career, man.
100%.
I look back, I tell guys all the time, I tell firefighters all the time, your parents, you ever had your parents tell you, like, man, you ever tell you, say, man, you don't know how good you got it.
Right.
Yes. You ain't got no bills. go play basketball, go surfing, ride a half pipe, whatever you're doing. Firefighters the same way. And captains and then lieutenants, company officers the same way. I look back, man, and I forget, and I just find myself like at that age in my life and in my career where, I'd be lying to you, man, if I wasn't doing a lot of reflecting and looking back and going, damn, man, if I could go back. I mean, I'm good where I'm at. I'm happy. I'm so blessed where I'm at, but like, can I just go back to being in my 30s and being a captain on a rig again? Like, that was so unbelievably fun. Like, for me, if you like kind of leading, influencing, impacting people's lives, if you like the guy being on the tip of the spear, making decisions that are time compressed, you like that kind of adrenaline rush. Yeah, man, there is no question about it. There is no question about it. I'm not downplaying what anybody else thinks. No. That's my favorite position, is being a boss on a rig with the guys all day long.
No, the relationships you can form. When you promote above that, it's. I don't want to say so much more work, but there's more effort involved. It's not effortless when you're riding that rig with them. Lack of a better term, just farting on each other in a rig and spending that time together, man. Sorry, you get me rambling about it. But company officer is always max points. Anybody who knows me knows that I could, like, you're preaching at the choir when you told me that answer. So everything you said, I 1,000% think is the God's truth about company officer.
Well, if you look back at your career and all the stories come from a certain part of your career, then that's probably going to be the best one. For me, it's when I was a company officer. Like, I've got so many stories, and I try not to be that guy, man. That senior guy is like, well, let me tell you what happened on this day. But you find yourself falling into it, and most of mine come from when I was a boss on a rig, working with several different groups over my 9 or 10 years. Just phenomenal experiences, man. Yeah, man, it's the shit.
No, 100%. You can't say it better than that.
We should go back to a certain extent, to be honest with you.
No, if you get the time machine, I'm jumping in and going with. Best advice you have ever received?
Man, that's a tough one. I would probably say the best advice that I ever received, as basic as it sounds, is to attach yourself to someone who's a good person who knows the job. So, I think most people have probably heard this type of analogy. If you surround yourself with, 5 piss poor firefighters, 5 piss poor leaders, you'll become the 6. Nice. You surround yourself with 5 great leaders, 5 great firefighters, you'll become the 6. And that's hand in hand with attach yourself. Find that person in your department, on your company, and it may not even be in your department. It may be somebody outside your department. Attach yourself to them and learn from them. And keep in mind, too, for young guys that are watching this, it's not just about the fire service. It's not just about what you know on the job. It's about developing as a young man into an older man. And I will tell you, for me, it was a big deal. I learned a lot from my father, but, when I got in the fire department, from the time I was 19 to the time I was 30 years old, I learned a tremendous amount from the older men that I worked with. Find those people and attach yourself to them. Listen, is that any different advice that you'd give your son or your daughter? It goes back to what I said earlier, man. If I influence in my kid's life, they're not old enough to understand that shit yet. I'm removing it. Physically, whatever it takes, it's not going to be there, because once they become 18 or 19, I'm not going to be able to do that. Right. So take that same analogy, right, as an adult firefighter, and you surround yourself with the right people and you pick those people. It's all a choice. It's decisions, period. Excuses are out the window. You can make excuses, you can make it happen, but you can't do both. Right. So yes. So the advice would be is to find that 1 or 2 or 3 people and attach yourself to them. Surround yourself with the right people. If you go down a bad path in your career as a firefighter, you said it earlier, look in the mirror, who you were sitting around with. I've got guys that I grew up with. I grew up kind of in a tough way. Me and my brother did, and I had a group of friends that went the road to the left, and I took the road to the right. And the road to the right led to the fire service and to where I'm at today. And the road to the left led to jail and some very bad things for my friends. It's decisions. Yourself with the right people.
Nice. Hey, I try very hard. not to just make the 5 questions just max points, max points, max points, max points. So you are making it very easy to give max points today with your answers. Number 5, final question. And actually, I'm going to do a bonus question after this, but if you have time, you have to tell me if you have to go. Otherwise, I'll talk all night. Number 5, heavy fire and searchable space. Would you rather be assigned to the nozzle or first in on VES?
That's easy, man. Anybody who knows me said, no, I'm going to choose a nozzle. I don't know why. I'm an engine guy. I you know, the 2 areas that I consider kind of my strengths in the fire service is one has to do with, you know, kind of the leadership aspect, and the other has to do with engine operations. And although I rode a ladder that doesn't matter most of my career, you know, suburban America, man, we do, you know, most of it was, man, and I've gravitated to it. I was so lucky 7-8 years ago to be invited into the Andy Fredericks FDIC engine group, you know, and it furthered my passion for the engine stuff, because I've been surrounded by guys through Andy's group and then through Steve Robertson's group with Stretching for Success. So yeah, man, I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, I've been on both ends. I've been in the search and finding victims, and I've been on the nozzle. But if you gave me a choice, man, I'm on the nozzle all day long, dude. It's a no-brainer. You know,
fair. That's fair. That's why and that's the thing. What's that now?
If we're not doing the nozzle shit, then the guys in the truck ain't making the rescues, or whoever the engine or whoever it is. So
I love it. And again, last question. There's no right answer. I just love hearing people's reasons for which one they prefer. So I just love hearing the passion in it, man. Yeah, there's so many people yelling nozzle, pipe, nozzle. Yeah, put me on the pipe. The nozzle creates and maintains searchable space. Put the fire out, everything gets better. Yeah.
You know, for me, I mean, I agree with everything like that, but I don't know what it is, man. It's the excitement. It's as goofy as it sounds. I've had some discussions with my 16-year-old son. He's thinking about this, and I said, man, aside from it being a good job, I said, you know, it's exciting. There are things you get to do that other people would never experience. And for me on the nozzle, for all the guys watching, they know exactly what I'm talking about.
100%.
I mean, you know, making the push and zero visibility, and then either having to stop and listen and go the right direction. As you get closer, the glow gets more, and then you can hear it louder. And then when you hit it, you know, it's just, for me, it's just exciting, man. I mean, not to downplay the rescue part, but that's just exhilarating for me. And that's the fun part. Like I'm getting sidetracked, but I'm going to say it anyways. I used to tell guys all the time, I wish some dude would just come into an interview, like, why do you want to be a fireman? And you'll hear this, well, I want to serve, I want to protect, I want to help my citizens. I want somebody to just come in and say, you know what, man? I just want to ride a fire truck, listen to sirens, and go into burning buildings.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yes, you get it. And I want to say this is that everybody in this audience that's listening right now gets it exactly. You don't have to explain it to any of us, because mutts don't watch the scrap. That's just what it comes down to.
That's a good point.
I have a bonus question. It's not associated, but I need to ask you this question. And like 3 or 4 people have asked me to ask it. It's ask him, and it's coming from Romagus. He said, ask him about preparing to your children's standards. If you got time to ramble one more time.
Man, I'm good. I got half a drink. I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a part I do in my class, and I can't tell you exactly where and how I came about. I really can't. I can't pinpoint in my career. Obviously, most likely after I started having children. I mentioned earlier that I got 3 children. I got a 22-year-old daughter. Her name is Michaela. I got a 16-year-old son. His name is Jordan. And I've got a 13-year-old boy. His name is a lot of guys at school and sports call him Stoney. But obviously, as one would expect, my world revolves around them.
Absolutely. Nice.
That's them and a couple of our close friends, right? So I tell guys all the time, the reality is that you have to size yourself up by your children's standards, you know, because we struggle with operational discipline and complacency throughout our career. But what you shouldn't struggle with is if somebody was trapped and they were the one you loved, and you got a phone call today and your entire world crumbled because they were gone. That's something that's easy for everybody to wrap their head around. And for us, it's a little bit more difficult, because what we do in the fire service is that we deal with all these horrific things. We really do. And most of us deal with them pretty well, but part of the way we kind of compartmentalize them and we move on with life, and we definitely don't intermingle our family with it. We can't, because as soon as you start doing this, then it becomes very difficult. And you can define that, if you want to get down into the weeds of it, is post-traumatic stress, not post-traumatic stress, disorder, but post-traumatic stress. Most, if not all, firefighters live with a level of post-traumatic stress.
Absolutely.
That's defined as the anxiety of worrying about something that's going to happen to your loved ones.
100%.
There's more to it. That's essentially the thing of it. So, I mean, I can relate to that. I have been very fortunate that I haven't suffered PTSD. I mean, I've handled it very well. But I'll tell you right now, that post-traumatic stress on a fucking daily basis. I've got my family on a 360. When I hear a call go out in my district, I'm looking to see where they're at. Vehicle with extrication, I'm checking. So it happens, right? So that whatever that case is, you take that person, you put them in that spot, and if they're there. So the question you need to ask yourself is that if your kid, Michaela, Jordan, or Caleb are trapped, and you had to go get them. And I tell people this in my class, you had to go get them in 30 minutes. I mean, what would you do? How important would everything become for you at that point, right? So bitching about what the chief did or didn't do.
Nice.
How important is that? How about that air pack you checked this morning, right? It was 200 pounds low. How important is that 200 pounds now? Is it really that important?
Yeah.
No, it becomes pretty important.
Dude,
How
I
about
love
presetting
that.
your gear, right? Is presetting your gear important? Yeah, it becomes important. Well, what about your suspenders, right? You just put your suspenders between your boots because you're in a hurry. How many times have you stepped in your boots?
Had
Your
to take 'em
suspenders are between. How important is it to put it on the outside of your boots now? How important is it to put that radio strap so that you put your radio strap on before you put your coat on, right? How important is your 20-second mask up time, which happens to be our standard in the Midway Fire District? How important is it now? The point being is that all of these things we will downplay very easily until you take a loved one and you put them in that position. So in my classes, I talk heavily about that because I believe in it. It's not a bullshit line. It's what I live by. The station that I stopped by this afternoon to take a look at their hose load and to talk to them about different options, that is the first Duke company in my house that I'm sitting in now.
Wow.
So it is extremely important that these guys everywhere, every opportunity I have, is to get them to understand that, because the reality is, right, for those of you guys that are watching that are fortunate enough to watch Ray McCormick's FDI speech years ago, he talks about pulling up, right? What does he say? He says, I love it, man. I told Ray this countless times. I said, man, I got to tell you, man, I bite your shit all the time. I know you don't like it, but I'm using it. I give him credit for it, but he's right. He's like, when you pull up, your chances are 50-50, right? It's not like, was it searchable? Is it survivable? Is it this? No, it's fucking 50-50. It's period. You're either going to do it or you're going to do it, not going to do it. The question you got to ask yourself is, are you mentally and physically prepared? Are you trained enough to put yourself in that 50% that gives you the confidence and the ability to affect the rescue? I think that's the biggest question, and it all goes back down to preparation. It all ties down into your children's standards. Are you prepared to rescue your child? Because anytime you have a discussion with anybody and they downplay it and you say, well, what was your kid? What are they going to say? No, it's not that important. Bullshit, they're not going to say that. It may not be your kid, or it may be your kid. But if it isn't your kid, it's somebody's kid, and the decisions that we make is going to make a difference in somebody's life for the rest of their life. I've always told guys all the time, man, I've gone through my career and I've been involved in a bunch of stuff. Unfortunately, whatever you want to fucking call it, it doesn't matter. But the reality is the ones that we've done everything that we know that we could do, and they didn't survive, I'm good with. I don't mean in a bad way. I mean, I'm not good with it, but I'm okay with it. I live with it.
Right.
Because we did everything we could. For me, maybe not everybody else, I process in a way where I go on and I live my life just fine. It's part of life. For the ones that that they died and you weren't prepared, and every experienced firefighter has got more than a minute on the job. They can tell you a story and they won't, because they'll probably get choked up when they do. It's tough to fucking live with, man. It's tough to live with, because the fact that we know deep down we could have done something different that could have made somebody survive or not. And it all directly ties into your children's standards and how do you size them up.
Wow.
So I'm sorry I went way long, but that's basically what I believe. The story. You talk to anybody that works with me, they're going to tell you the same thing. I talk about it all the time. So.
No, I'm glad that Kyle brought it back up to ask him about the children's standards, because it was on our notes. They just didn't quite get there because we were going down rabbit holes. And so when he brought it up, I am so glad that I asked that question, because the person actually who I feel sorry for now is next week 8 days from now, Jay Bonifield is coming on to talk, and he has to follow up this scrap because it has been an amazing scrap. And so this is going to be a tough act to follow. So, Chief, yes, man, I'm not often speechless. Like, I like to listen, but holy crap, this was awesome. Best place to contact you, reach out. You're traveling now and speaking again, so book a class, whatever. Go.
I'm not actually doing it a whole lot, to be honest with you. I'm doing it a few. We'll be at Firehouse Expo with Steve Robertson in the Stretching for Success class. I'm part of their group. FDIC as well. I tell you what is kind of unique, though, as you met my younger brother, DJ.
Yes.
We do a class called The Anatomy of a Rescue, and there's two videotape-recorded rescues that happened in the city of Fort Walton Beach within a few years of each other. One was in 2015 in an apartment fire that I was incident commander on, and the other was about a year and a half ago on Valentine's Day, where he was the captain of a very dramatic rescue that has really made its rounds because it's really caused a lot of the fire service to relook at the survivability of spaces. But we do a class and it's called The Anatomy of a Rescue. And what we do is we break it down into two areas. And most of it's centered around preparation. What I do as a battalion chief to prepare my companies to succeed on a rescue, a VES, or any type of fire entrapment call. And then what he does as a captain that kind of builds off of what we do as battalion chiefs. So we're doing this class called The Anatomy of a Rescue.
Nice.
We've done it at a couple of different conferences, but we're doing it at FDIC this year, which unfortunately has been rescheduled again for the third time. So hopefully everybody can make it down there. But that's really the only plug I got, man. I mean, with this new job, I haven't been doing a whole lot of teaching, but I'll be out at Firehouse Expo, FDIC. And for anybody who may be up in Indiana, South Bend, Indiana, I'm going up there with Chris Stretch Martin. And we're doing at the Lake Effect Conference with Ron Smith and Steve Robertson. We're doing some things up there in May. So that's really it, man. Other than that, I'm just focused on, taking care of business and doing stuff here locally.
Chief and stuff.
My new position.
Right on.
Chief
right
stuff.
on.
Yeah.
Chief and stuff.
As Chief Isaacson, Kurt would say, the dark side.
The dark side. I like it. No, Chief, that's awesome. And I am going to be at FDIC, and I am going to catch that Anatomy of a Rescue. So that'll be awesome to see you and your brother do that. Awesome. I always like to do this recently. David Pruitt came by and he gave me a challenge coin. It is for a DPS that he works at. And so this is my first DPS coin, and they have their have honor, be loyal, serve always is the fireside motto there. And it's a pretty cool challenge coin. It will be added to my collection. As always, if you want me to show off your coin, send it to me. Of course, Shane Bentley last week sent me a care package. I posted the thing. He sent me so much. I mean, that guy, amazing. He's got the code of honor on the back. Hard to see. My camera will not focus. But the Bears of the Oath, the BOTO, and the amazing things those guys are doing, which I think they're doing 3 conferences this year. So that's going to be amazing. Housekeeping is, I already said, Jay Bonifield's coming up next week. After that, David Mellon, Valor Fire Training, then John Lovato. So it's an exciting April moving forward. Housekeeping stuff is talking about the Honor the Fallen Firefighter Conference. That is the conference that I am putting together it's a benefit conference for the families of the Waynoka firefighters that perished doing that search on those up there in Waynoka, Oklahoma in January. All of the speakers are lined up, unbelievable lineup coming. Howard Reinwald, Kyle Romagus, Chief Scott Thompson, I'm Rob Rodriguez, Sean Duffy, Pablo again. I'm trying to do it all from memory, and I'm leaving Jeremy Sanders. I'm going to leave people out as I cycle through it. Mark Davidson. It's going to be an amazing time. And then with the hands-on training, the registration should be up next week. So be ready for that. We're getting the hot tracks lined out. The speakers are lined up. The venue is lined up. Already we've got Kurt Isaacson is passed out, is going to give CF Tactics swag and a passes to conferences to raffle off. Smoothbore Cartel is sending swag. There's Brian LaFleur is making a badass custom leather fire bucket to be raffled off, and I haven't even started reaching out yet for stuff to raffle. This is stuff coming in of people offering before we've even started reaching out. So it's going to be amazing. So if you want to help reach out on Facebook, contact me, please. Final stuff. I keep getting comments, people sending me, yes, my face is all marked up. I roll jujitsu almost every day, and sometimes sometimes I don't tap when I should, and I get bruises on the face. So I'm not getting in fights because that's the comments I get quite a bit. Other than that, Chief Shannon Stone, this was an amazing scrap. So I can't say thank you enough for spending your evening with me.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it, man. And keep doing great things, man. You're really making an impact. Thanks for having me on. I really, really appreciate it.
It was a blast, sir. And for everybody, thank you so much for the comments, the questions. It truly makes the scrap great. Rob Ramirez, thank you for correcting me. And for everyone watching, I hope the tone stays silent. Unless it's burning, stay safe out there.